What a great evening you're watching or listening to DidsburyFM, Fabulous Mums and Dads, and it's Father's Day, and we have a father with us.
Afraid not.
Oh.
Sadly not.
I didn't know that.
No.
Oh, good.
Never quite worked out.
You're the Didsbury, at DidsburyFM and all.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I've got a very nice niece and two nephews though.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, you don't want to be. God, you don't want more than that.
That's as much responsibility as I need.
Well, I've got 3 children, and Sarah's got 2, so you're welcome to any of those. I was always promising them to Madonna, but yeah. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a joke. Thank you very much for joining us. I want us to start. You are Jeff Smith.
Yes.
And you're the Member of Parliament for Didsbury.
Well, my constituency is Manchester Withington, so that includes Didsbury, but also includes Chorlton, Burnage, Withington, and a little bit of Fallowfield.
Oh, right. That's a huge area.
Yeah, it's from kind of Trafford on one side to Stockport on the other. Yeah.
Yeah. So presumably there's a wide spectrum of needs and issues in that large area.
And that's one of the nice things about my constituency, actually, is that it's got lots of different types of communities within it. So you've got, a very nice gentrified area on Burton Road where we are now, which is very nice for me because I just live up the other end of Burton Road. And then you've got, some nice garden villages in Chorlton and Burnage. You've got social housing estates. You've got student properties. You've got all sorts of different types of people living in the area, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to go back to the beginning, please, if I may. Why politics? How did you get into politics?
I was kind of born into it, to be honest. It's sort of in my blood because my mum and dad met. My mum and dad were both members of the Labour League of Youth, it was called in those days, the Labour Party's young persons organisation. Yeah. And so they met at a walk organised on Kinder Scout by the Labour League of Youth, and then they met at a dance also organised later on by the Labour League of Youth. And so they've always been involved in politics, my mum and dad. They were members of the Labour Party. My dad worked for a trade union. And so I was kind of, there was no escape. There's no way I was not going to be involved in some way in Labour politics.
And did they encourage it then?
Yes, not actively, but it was just always something that our family did. We used to go to Labour Party meetings when I was quite young. And I kind of got more and more involved. So after a while of just going along to meetings, I was asked to be the local secretary of the branch, and then eventually there was a vacancy for the local councillor, so I stood to be the local councillor. And then purely by accident, there was a vacancy for the local MP candidate, and so I'd never really planned to be an MP. Not one of these people who said, right, one day I'm going to be an MP. Yeah. But the vacancy was there, and I thought, well, I'll kick myself if I don't try. Yeah. And so that's how I ended up as the MP for Manchester Withington.
Wow. And so did you study politics?
I did actually, because I'd always had an interest in it. And you don't have to study politics to be an MP, though MPs from all kinds of different backgrounds. I had an interest in politics, and so I went to Manchester University actually and did economics and politics. Yeah. Tried to drop as much of the economics after the first year as I could, concentrate on the politics. And so, that was kind of good grounding in it, but I'd always had that interest.
Interesting. Now, can I ask you about politics at the moment, if I may?
You can.
Where do you see politics going?
Well, I think we've got quite a divided society at the moment, and a lot of that comes down to Brexit, and that's what consumes us in Parliament. And I should say in passing, I think it's an absolute disaster. I campaign for Remain. I still think, if possible, we should try and reverse that decision if public opinion changes, and if that's not possible, we need to get the best deal out that we can. But obviously that was a very divisive process, and we have a kind of political atmosphere, not just in this country, but I think generally, which has become more divisive and difficult in recent times. So what I hope is that we will get through the Brexit process and start to bring people back together again. But that is not an easy thing to do.
No. And can I ask you, I suppose, an emotive question? about Joe Cox.
Yeah.
And very sad time.
Mm.
Did you know Joe, and what was she like? Because she was very much admired by all sides of the political sides, really.
Yeah. Joe was a good friend of mine. We were both part of the 2015 intake of MPs. And when a group of people join Parliament together, you tend to have a bit of a bonding.
Yeah.
And Joe was somebody that I got on with really well. We worked together on a couple of different issues, Syria in particular. She had a great interest in Syria. And she, there's lots been said about Joe, about how what a lovely person she was, how wonderful she was, what a rising star she was. And every word of that is true. She was just the most wonderful woman. And it was just... I'm getting emotional now thinking about it because it's just such a tragedy. It's just terrible. And we were all together actually. Our group of MPs were all together 2 nights before she died. We had a party on her houseboat.
Oh.
That's the last time I saw her. So it's quite an emotional time of year for lots of us. I mean, we're all friends with Joe.
Yeah.
So it's just terrible.
Yeah. And I know that her husband and her family.
Yeah.
And she indeed said we've got more in common than divides us.
Yes.
And so the great get-togethers,
Yes.
which lots of us have participated in, as Sarah's participating in various neighbours, is a really great idea.
It is.
And I think, you agree it's another way to bring us all together.
It is, and it's about, as you say, bringing people together. It's also about remembering Jo, and I think it's a real fitting legacy for her.
Yeah.
Because that was, the phrase she used in her maiden speech, is the phrase that's become associated with her. There's a plaque to her in the House of Commons chamber, and that's the words on the plaque is more in common.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's Jo all over. She always had an interest in bringing people together. And so that's a fitting way to remember her.
Now I'm going to ask you a controversial question.
Okay.
Do you fancy the Labour leadership?
No. No, I would not. It's far too much stress in that job. I have enough stress as an MP.
I don't think you'll be in the Met on a Sunday night if you were.
Maybe not, actually, yes. And that's a nice place to be, so.
Yeah. And what do you think will happen? Do you think there might be a new leader, or do you think there's a prospect of a Prime Minister or anything?
Well, that's a different issue. I think there's quite a prospect of a different Prime Minister, but I think that will be before the next election. I suspect that...
A Labour minister I'm talking about.
No, I think there will be... I mean, I've almost given up trying to predict what happens in politics these days because it's so volatile. But if I was to make a prediction, it would be that Theresa May won't be the Conservative leader or the Prime Minister when we go into the next election. I think they'll probably get through Brexit and she will be replaced. So I suspect there'll be another Tory leader. I think Jeremy Corbyn will be the Labour leader at the next election. I don't think there's any question about that.
Interesting. Well, I wait to see our audience questions. Can I ask you then about community and what community means to you? And then I'll ask a £1 million question after that. So for you personally, you live locally, you're in a large ward. What does community mean to you?
I think it's about roots and identity and belonging, and most of all about a kind of mutual support. And there are lots of different types of communities, so you can get kind of communities of identity, so it might be the Asian community or the gay community, or you can get geographic communities, and Didsbury is a different community to parts of Chorlton, for example. But it's about coming together and belonging, and I always think the important thing about a community is the support it gives to people who are perhaps most vulnerable or most isolated and lonely. So particularly for people who don't have family, community is really important. So I have good friends who are on their own, perhaps older, living in sheltered accommodation. I can think of one particular friend of mine, and the Withington community means a lot to him. And it provides him with a lot of personal support that he doesn't have from his family, and that I think is what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I have a neighbour who's been in Didsbury for over 60 years. Her son lives in London. He's keen for her to go and move down there. And she doesn't want to because she doesn't have the support of, the likes of me saying, come around for a coffee or a glass of wine. And being able to walk to the post office and indeed. And is that on sort of the political agenda at all to try and combat some of that isolation and loneliness? We're just a small community group, but that's high on our agenda.
Well, funny that you should ask that, having spoken about Jo Cox, because that was one of the issues that she took up in Parliament, was trying to tackle loneliness. And there is a group in Parliament that I've been a part of that's led by two other MPs, Rachel Reeves, who's a Labour MP, and Seema Kennedy, who's a Conservative MP, coming together to try and tackle loneliness and isolation, and just trying to make sure that all the decisions we take in Parliament, when we make decisions, we have in the back of our mind, how is this going to affect or impact on isolation and loneliness?
Yeah. So, the £1 million question. What would you do with £1 million if I gave it to you? Particularly, I said philanthropic, as I said to Jane, a community initiative of some sort, or would you just blow it all on a holiday?
Well, it would be tempting to do what I do with all the rest of my money, which is blow it following Bruce Springsteen around the world. It's true. I wouldn't do that, though. I've already spent enough on that. Funnily enough, I was thinking about this the other day, this exact question, and what I think I would do is set up a funding pot, because in recent years, because of the cuts that the council's faced, they've had to cut back a lot on community grants, and so a lot of community organisations have struggled for that money. Now, if you could set up a pot of funding that people could bid into, and that would also help unlock some other funding, because sometimes a community organisation will go to a funder and say, we need £40,000, and they'll say, well, you get 20,000 and we'll give you the other 20,000.
Right.
So if you could set up a funding pot that allows that sort of, brings in that kind of match funding, I think that would be a useful way of helping out local organisations.
Well, interesting, because we've set up a Just Giving page to raise £1 million and a
£1 million?
crowdfunding. Yeah,
okay. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Ambitious.
Don't joke about. Come on, Jeff. Aim high. So it's interesting, really. It's a big figure. Why not?
Why not?
But it's interesting what you say, because things like the Scouts Hut, or things that really need funding. Jane's festival.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would
Which
be
was
useful.
fantastic, by the way. I was there yesterday, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, Jane's festival. That's what I call it.
We all call it Jane's Festival.
We all call it Jane's Festival. But it is a good idea, and I think we could combat more. But having said that, these are things the government should be funding.
Yeah.
And I know the Labour Party is not in government, but
that's right.
If there was, I'd be asking the same question. It's no good relying on volunteers all the time. So interesting. Now, music, and then we'll go to the floor.
Yeah, okay.
We've already told us about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Great choice, by the way.
Okay.
What's your ultimate 3 songs?
3 songs.
If you can't manage 3, maybe just 1.
Oh, I could manage 3,000. I used to be a DJ, you see.
Yes, well, that's what I'm coming to.
Oh, okay.
Well, tell us about that, firstly.
Oh, well.
How and why were you a DJ?
Well, I went to university, and while I was at university, I used to DJ in the student bars for nothing. And then when I left university, I used to work as an event manager. So I used to run concerts and festivals and that kind of thing. So you'd get like a 2-week contract or a 3-month contract. But to keep the money coming in, I started DJing again.
Oh, right. So you've actually had a real job as a politician.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Crikey. Okay.
And so the DJing kind of really took off. So at one time I was doing 4 or 5 nights a week at different cities around the north of England.
Wow.
So I had this kind of, and then I stood for the council, so I had this kind of double life where I was a respectable citizen during the day, and then I was in nightclubs at night. But obviously, I mean, I've been really lucky in my life, and I've been able to work in 2 of my great passions, music and politics.
Yeah.
So I was a DJ for 20 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so a long time. Huh?
Are you still doing it?
Yeah, no, sadly not. I'm getting a bit too old for that.
Well, when we have our summer special, we'll call on your skills.
I'd love to. I'd love to. No, it was when the kids started getting to be half my age, the kids in the clubs, that was when I thought, time to hang the headphones up. So, Carl used to go to my nights a lot.
Oh, you could tell, you could,
Yeah, that's right.
fantastic. Can we have a round of applause for Jeff?
I didn't know we did the songs.
Yeah, oh, actually, yeah, no, sorry.
No, we didn't do
forgive
the
me.
songs.
We didn't do the songs.
Okay,
The floor is yours.
So I'd have to do Bruce Springsteen, and it could be any one of those, but let's say Racing in the Street. If you don't know that one,
I don't know that one.
give it a listen, it's fantastic. I'd have to have something by the Beatles, because that's who I grew up with, and the greatest artists of the 20th century. And again, it could be anything, but my favourite one at the moment, do you know Sgt. Pepper's album? Yeah. Anyway, there's a song on that called Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, which is just for some reason, my current favourite song.
Oh, right.
But, you know...
Sarah, you're listening to these. She's searching for it
Oh,
on the
okay.
radio.
but it could be anything by the Beatles. And then there's a song that I really love, an old sort of soul-y song called High Heel Sneakers by Tommy Tucker, which you will know you'll know it if you hear it. It's fantastic.
Have you had 4? No.
No, that's 3.
Oh, right, okay. I was just checking, sneaking one in there. Excellent. Right, we'll try it. She's typing it down for when you come on the radio show.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm making Claire Mooney clap far too much. Can we open it up to the floor? I know, me too. Do people have any questions? Lady with the blonde hair, and then we'll go around.
Yeah, my husband just texted you a question, but it's really complicated about Brexit, so I'll ask you that after.
Okay.
But my question was, do you have a cause? Because you've already mentioned Remain, and it's great to hear that there are still people thinking Remain.
Yeah.
But do you think there's 1 or 2 or 3 things that you kind of say, yes, this is me, this is what I'll always stand for, or does the field change too much for you to have a cause?
No, that's a good question. Because you go into Parliament and I think there are these things called all-party groups, which people form to look at different causes, different types of interest. There's something like 500 or 600 of these all-party groups. And so there are all kinds of things you can get involved with. And so when you go into Parliament, you're kind of looking for 1 or 2 that you think, well, how can I make a difference? How can I bring my personal experience into making a difference in Parliament? So, I mean, obviously there are the big things. There's Brexit, there's climate change, there's, just campaigning for social justice that run through everything you do. But then there are 2 or 3 things that I've personally been involved with, and I suppose a couple of them are mental health. I'm co-chair of the group on vice chair of the group on mental health because of my personal background and my family background. I've had a lot of experience of mental health issues, so that's one. And then the other one that I've slightly become known for is drug policy and drug policy reform, because I strongly believe that our drug policy in this country isn't working, and we should stop criminalising people, and we should treat drugs as a health issue and focus on harm reduction. And so I've been doing quite a lot of work recently on drug policy. And just accepting, really, or recognising, let's say, that people will take drugs. People have taken them for thousands of years and are not going to stop because the government is criminalising them. Prohibition generally doesn't work, and so let's try and look at how we can reduce harm. So if people are going to go and take an ecstasy pill at a nightclub, let's not throw them in jail or try and criminalise them. Let's allow them to have that drug tested so it's safe, because there's a big problem at the moment with very toxic MDMA and ecstasy and cocaine, and even though drug use is static, deaths from drug use is rising. So that's a long answer, but that's one of the things that I've become more involved with in Parliament, and I think it comes from my personal background. So I've spent a lot of time in nightclubs around people who use recreational drugs, and so I think I understand the issues, and I think it's not something that most people want to get involved with. It's a bit too controversial for most politicians, so it's something that I thought, well, I can try and make a difference on that.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. That's really.
Claire, what's the quirkiest thing you've been asked to do by a constituent?
that we can put on the radio.
What?
Gosh.
think we'll have to edit it.
Oh God, you know, you get some strange requests from people. I'm just trying to think of it. You know how somebody will ask you that question, my mind's gone blank. I bet something will come to me in a minute.
Okay, well, can I just say, I asked a councillor, not in Manchester, about what was the weirdest thing that they'd been told, and basically they said somebody had come to their constituency about a road traffic accident, and they said, and this is what happened. She thought she was going to get a photograph, and basically the bloke had drawn a little picture of what had taken place, so it was like she couldn't do very much with it. I just wondered if you got anything like that.
Let me think about that.
Okay.
There will be loads of examples, but there's not one that springs to the front of my mind. I should have an anecdote ready for these sort of situations, shouldn't I?
Jeff, when you went into Parliament, was there anything when you first, from going from council, being an MP, what was the biggest thing that sort of, you were like, right, I didn't expect this?
That shocked you? Probably the lack of minorities and women.
No, you're right. Minorities and women are not adequately represented, but that is actually getting better on both sides of the chamber. It's not just Labour; it's both sides. I suppose there's lots of strange, little quirky rules. You know the way, just you will have heard it in the chamber. The way we have to address ourselves. So I share a flat with another MP, Lucy, who's the MP for Manchester Central.
Oh,
so
yeah, she's coming on.
Oh, is she? Oh, great.
In October.
So because she lives in Didsbury. So we share a flat in London for when we're down Monday to Thursday. So I get the bus in with her in the morning, and I've known her years. She's my best mate in Parliament. I call her Lucy. But if I get up in the chamber, I have to refer to her as the Honourable Lady. And it's just those kind of little quirky rules. And then there are lots of guys walking around in tights carrying swords. So that's all. You can. So you kind of get used to all those little strange, quirky things. But I mean, every day, honestly, this is no exaggeration. Every day I walk into that building and think, wow, what a place to work. 'Cause it's just one of the most iconic buildings in the world, and it's just an incredible place to go.
And how often are you down there?
So I'll normally go down on a Monday morning. I'll get a train mid-morning, and then come back sometime on Thursday.
Right.
Because I'm a whip for the Labour Party, so sitting days are normally Monday to Thursday, so I have to be in every day. And then I'm in the constituency Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's sitting times, which is a bit like school term times, actually. So when term time is on, I'll be down there Monday to Thursday.
Right. Okay. I've just got another question. I've superseded somebody. How do you think Andy Burnham's doing?
I think he's doing a good job, actually, and I think he's creating a role there, because the role was created for Greater Manchester Mayor without much power, in truth. So he has to work bringing people together, because he's unlike, for example, the Mayor of London, who has executive powers over virtually all public policy in London. Andy has to work as part of a team of 11. So there's Andy plus the other 10 leaders of the councils in Greater Manchester. So Andy has to very much kind of bring people together and get people to agree on the policies they want to tackle and the ways they do it. So I think he's doing a good job kind of creating the role. He's been very active, as you'll probably be aware, on the fiasco around Northern Rail.
Oh yeah.
And I think he's done a really good job putting pressure on Northern Rail and the government to try and sort out those problems. So I think it's not an easy thing to go and kind of create a role, create a new job, really, and I think he's doing a good job.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Do you have any other questions for Jeff? Good. We can have another pint. Well done.
Okay.
Jeff. Can we thank
Thank you.